Welcome to In Our Community. I'm Suzanne Barnett, your host, and this is part 2 of a wonderful show, really, that we just did with David and Wayne about disabilities. And some of you that have seen the show before, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about. David Forderer is a disability advocate appointed by Governor Jerry Brown to the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. And David represents the Central Coast region. My other guest that is just fantastic also is David Glusker, who's a professional photographer who's been assisting David with his advocacy since 1909. I mean 1990.
2009.
2009.
Yes.
I really screwed up.
And my name is Wayne, not David, but that's okay. I've
No,
been called worse.
Wayne.
That's all right.
Okay.
No problem.
So anyway,
Yes.
I have to tell the audience, I'm just blown away by both of you. And I really would like to start out, Wayne, if you don't mind, talking about the disability. Just, you did it so succinctly.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Suzanne. So my partnering with David, meeting him at church, I had no idea where our relationship would go to. First of all, in my family, there really aren't any people that are disabled, so I had no introduction to the disability arena. From the standpoint of disability, David is certainly one of the more severely handicapped or disabled from birth, cerebral palsy. His sight, he's legally blind, and obviously if you listen to the previous show, his speech is not perfectly clear. But in the meantime, his mind is sharp as a tack and his passion is politics. And so much of the disabled population is confronted with the idea that the general population treats them as useless or worthless.
Even with the name of the society, when we need to go backwards and put people with disabilities back in determinants.
Right.
That's what some people think.
Yeah, there are still to this day some people who believe that anyone born with a disability should be locked away. They're really not going to contribute to society. But it takes some time. David was not taught to read as a young boy because the individuals assessing him thought he was not going to amount to anything. So why waste our time? But as they found, or they did not find out, but as individuals like myself found out, he may look like he's not much of a person as far as contributions go, but this guy is contributing so much to the state of California because of all the people that have believed in him. One of the things I realized early on is that, excuse you need some water?
Yeah.
All right. Excuse me for a moment. One of the things I found out as an individual working with David is that disabilities come in all sorts of different arenas. Some people, like David, are affected physically. Some others are affected mentally. The mentally affected are sometimes hard to see. They appear to be normal. David, obviously in a wheelchair, you can see him coming from a mile away. You could have 4 disabled individuals who suffer from autism walking towards you, and they would appear to be as normal as anyone else. But it may take a particular thing that set them off. So David has taught me that through the work that he does with the State Council and other entities, which we'll talk about, that because of the lack of the education of the general population, like myself, the average person has no clue about what it is to be disabled, number one, what it takes to live a fully included life, and the type of support that you rely on. David has been through quite a few different individuals who've cared for them. Some of them have been great, some of them have not been great. And this is a common problem amongst the disabled population. And unfortunately, it stems from lack of knowledge. For instance, if you knew nothing about tiddlywinks, you're not going to be interested in any sort of discussion going on or an argument that people are having. Same thing with disabilities. The average person does not have that information. So consequently, the people that work in the arena work from their heart. The average salary in California that
is typically the maximum in the beginning is 13, like 8,000 an hour, but the maximum is 15,000 an hour in this valley because of the new minimum wage laws.
Yeah, so basically a lot of them start at minimum wage. We all know that living in this valley, there's no way you can survive on $10 an hour. Yeah. So consequently, money is going to attract people that are maybe not having the right training, may not have the necessary qualifications, but they do it from their heart.
I see.
I would say that what I've discovered more than anything else, that the caretakers of the disabled population are represented by the island people and the Filipino population. They are servants of God, if you want, and David's staff is all Filipino. And so are a few other individuals. His brother Tom has an islander as one of his main caretakers. She's from Fiji. So through David, I've really learned a lot. And you want to go back to your time at San Francisco State and what happened there, how you got involved with the city of San Francisco?
I had to take a government class to pass to graduate. And my government teacher really believed in me. So he would be up with 2 internships. One at the court, the Superior Court of San Francisco, and one at the Mayor's Office on Disabilities.
So the mayor at this time was Willie Brown. Yep.
So you knew Willie?
I met him, yeah.
And what was one of the main tasks that you participated in while you served the Willie Brown administration?
I was part of the team that made sure that the San Francisco Giants ballpark was accessible, that they were building at that time.
Yeah, so he was one of the key people they relied on for making sure that this ballpark that has been serving the San Francisco Giants was compliant, that is, accessible to the disabled population.
Yeah.
Mostly people, obviously, in wheelchairs.
Oh, what an important position.
Yeah.
And also, not only accessible to wheelchairs, but to make sure they have
the word?
And know how to work with the disability, somebody with a disability that comes in to the ballpark.
Right. So training the people that worked at the ballpark and how to deal with a disabled person.
Yeah.
And to recognize what their needs might be. So for instance, for David, you just can't hand him a glass of water because obviously with his hands he can't hold them.
Right.
He can't.
As you saw just a couple of months ago, for me to take a simple glass of water when I had to hold the glass for me, and I had to drink it for a straw. But most people, when they go to a ballpark, they don't know where the cups are.
Yeah.
They don't know where the straws are. And you have to have people that are willing to show them and understand where the stuff is.
And it's still amazing to this day when we go to a restaurant how many people will put down a menu in front of him as if he were able to pick it up, bring him a glass of water as if he were to pick it up and drink it. And sometimes we have to ask for a straw, and they look at you like, you want a straw? Well, yes, he needs a straw to be able to drink through. You can try to let him sip it, but it's going to take a lot longer for him to drink it than it is through a straw. So even to this day, it's pretty interesting how people will look at him and not really think about who they're serving.
And they think, and they don't talk to me directly. They talk to the person I'm with.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like I'm not even there.
Yeah. See, that is.
Yeah, and that's pretty common. It's not like it's just one individual.
Yeah.
There are many times on the train when we go back and forth to Sacramento for business that people will be sitting and they'll be looking at David, kind of assessing what he's all about, and then they'll look at me and they'll say, they'll look at him and say something like, "It's nice day today," or something, and then they'll look at me as if I'm going to interpret, rather than addressing him particularly.
Yeah.
And then through a short conversation, he'll start chiming in, and they're almost in shock that he's able to converse. And then if we get into where are you going and what are you doing, they're literally floored to find out that he's working for the governor.
Yeah.
So.
What you know, at this point, I'd like to know exactly, David, what you do.
Okay. I have the honor to be the appointed representative from Meadow and from what we call the Central Coast region to the California State Council on Developmental Disabilities. My duties include helping promote policies to make people with disabilities their lives easier, and or to promote equal access for people with disabilities.
Equal what?
Equal access.
Access.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
What I mean by that, access to goods, access to any opportunity that you might have as an able-bodied person in the community. That, like, it could be something as simple as going to the movies.
Right. Yes. So everyone is familiar with the late Stephen Hawking.
Yes.
Probably one of the most famous scientists ever to grace this planet.
Yes.
Stephen was not born disabled. He was born obviously well, but over the time his body became disabled. But if you were to see him on the street again, most people would assume this gentleman is sad, a sad human being, probably not going to amount to much, not going to serve much. And yet, if you look at what he's done while he was here, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And that's where David struggles to fight for those people who are assumed not to be much worth being here.
Yeah.
David, for instance, has a brother, Ben, who cannot talk. So, and he is in a wheelchair.
But this guy's mind is incredible.
Yep, his mind is sharp as a tack. He actually did a sermon at church, which he wrote and delivered in a very similar manner to the way Stephen Hawking communicated through a device. He wrote the entire sermon, and the people that were able to witness that sermon were absolutely amazed. I was there, and it was pretty awe-inspiring. He is, if he could write,
or if he could communicate, this guy would blow you away.
Yeah, many people, I think even his mom has also said this, that he literally could be a very, very famous novelist. He has got some incredible ideas, but I'm not sure if it's the lack of support or what, but it's pretty obvious that this guy has a lot of talent. And then again, this is someone who can't communicate. For David, at least he can express through his voice what he's all about.
Yeah.
But then you have other people like his brother, Ben, who is equally as great and sharp of mind, but cannot communicate.
Yeah.
Again, this is just another aspect of the disabled population that people are not aware of.
And this is why I am so honored to be at the studio to allow you to experience in some way what people with disabilities can do.
Yep. Yeah, hopefully when Mark approached us about doing the show, I felt it was a great opportunity to allow a much larger audience to be exposed to David, to see what we go through a lot on the train, where we are literally educating 1, 2, 3, or 4 people at a time on a particular train ride, that someone like David, who originally might have been looked at as a little differently, at the end of the train ride, they look at him as, wow, amazing.
Yeah. I'm so touched by this, I really am, because I'm so uneducated also about disabilities.
Yep, well, that's the idea of doing the show, right, Dave?
Yeah.
That's why you're willing to do this show.
Willing, I'm honored. The word David is honored.
Because that's why I'm so honored to serve the people of the state.
Yeah.
To help promote access and to make sure the people with disabilities rights are protected.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's what I always do. I don't know if it's very popular to do, but I love to know how people feel. And like people that I interview are usually passionate about what they do. Like David, you're so passionate about politics. And Wayne, you are so passionate, and you are doing it to, educate the public.
Yes. Yeah.
But okay, so here's the question.
Sure.
Okay. It's really, I don't think many interviewers do this, but I just love to know, how does it make you feel inside when you're doing what you just love to do? How does that make you feel?
Well, I know David, for me, I feel really proud when David, not me, when David enlightens people as to what he's involved with.
Yeah.
And how their minds go from one area to a totally different area.
Yeah.
We have met so many people on the train that we've exchanged phone numbers with and addresses. People actually from overseas, from different countries, who have met David, have become so enthralled with his abilities and his advocacy work that they want to know more.
Yeah.
Because maybe in their country, the advocacy is a little bit different, or maybe the support system is a little different than here in California. Yeah, and we must realize that California is almost a country unto its own. It is the only state in the union
that has its own laws regarding people with disabilities.
Called the Lanterman Act. It was passed back in the 60s, and Frank Lanterman wrote this particular and authored this particular set of law to protect and advocate for the general population as a whole. And because California is the only state in the United States
that has the laws, we are in a unique position to lead the rest of the country.
Yep.
Thank goodness for that.
We need to do all we can, not only at the state level, but at the national level, to protect the rights of people with disabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much of the work that goes on here is duplicated by other states that watch California in its progressive ways advocate for this population. So many other states work differently, but when California sets forth a particular motion in education, for instance, or in housing, or in health care for the population, there are other states that are watching and paying attention to how California does it, number one, how it affects the population, number two, and the success that California has seen.
And you have to realize that nationally, people with disabilities are not employed at all.
Say that again.
People with disabilities are either underemployed or not employed at all.
Yeah.
Oh, the employment, yeah.
That's a big issue amongst the population.
Yeah.
Again,
And
people
you
like
can-
Dave, people look at David and say he's never going to hold a job of any kind. They could have never. But when you find out he works for the government, people say, "What?
Yeah.
What? How did that happen?" Right? But then again, that's dispelling that myth in their mind.
That's it.
And it's like, if people like Governor Brown that had the foresight to realize what people with disabilities can do, even when he was governor the first time, he was the first person ever to put somebody with a disability in charge of the Department of Rehab.
Yep.
David should be the poster man for disabilities.
Well,
He really should.
he's got different ideas. The idea is that he's been encouraged by not one but several people to look at seeking an office of some sort. So we're actually in the preliminary stages right now of doing that. David also had the opportunity to meet the next governor we are hoping of California, Mr. Gavin Newsom.
Oh,
He held court with David at some point with several hundred other people in the room. And David got quite an interview and quite exposure to Gavin. Gavin talked to David individually about his advocacy work and his family, and then from there exposed something which he said very few people knew about, and that is his family, Gavin's family, was a foster family. They took in a lot of foster kids, which was very interesting. You could see the eyes open really wide. So I think Gavin has a real place in his heart for this population. And he has sensed one of his key people in his campaign has shown interest in having David assist Gavin in his bid for governor. So we're excited about possibly at some point hooking up with them and letting David loose.
oh boy. Look out, planet, right?
Yep, look out, planet is right.
Yeah. That doesn't, I want to continue serving on the council as long as the governor will have me. Because not only have I opportunities with the campaign, but I want to continue in my involvement with the council as long as I can.
Yeah, so the council basically is made up of 31 people across the board. There are government agencies that are represented. In the previous laws that were established, the council member had a certain term limit, and when that term limit was reached, they left the board. Sometimes the governor was either being termed out or too busy to reappoint someone to that seat or to appoint someone to that seat. So consequently, when David joined the board, they were really not represented very well. There were a lot of seats open, which means you have a board that doesn't even have a quorum. You cannot really do any work. Don't have enough people to say yes or no. So since that time, the laws have changed now that say that you will be a council member as long as the governor feels you're doing your work. And until that time, you will not be going anywhere. So we don't know what will happen if once Jerry Brown leaves office. We don't know if whoever's elected, again, we hopefully think it's going to be Gavin Newsom,
yeah.
But that's the idea, is that David said, I want to continue to serve as long as you want me to.
This is a very good conclusion. I want to thank both of you. I mean, what can I say? I'm thrilled. And when I say, how does it make you feel? I kind of tingle all over. That's how I feel.
And only make me the question. I feel a great privilege and honor that the governor put me in this position, and every day I go to work, I think, how can I make the life for people in California better?
And you will. I mean, you are the personification of passion. I want to thank both of you so much. I mean,
thank you again for allowing me to take up some of your time and to allow me to do my best, which is to educate the community about people with differences.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
And I want to thank our crew, these two fabulous crew people, Robin and Bill. And I want to thank my viewers for watching. And I can't wait to see you next time. Bye-bye.